Hello everyone, this is Tyler here. Yeah, I'm gonna try to do my best to explain building, at least from a simple standpoint of just what you want to aim for when working on a design for a build. I might hop into my other world here for a second, just so I can show off some of my favorites. I'll be right back. So here we are in my sort of build testing world. I have two of these. A lot of my builds are over on PlayStation 4, but this is one of the major building projects I worked on. This is the casino from Persona 5. Of course, it's not nearly close to being actual game accurate, but this is something that I really just pride myself in and enjoyed working on because it's such a big undertaking of a project. So yeah, this is really cool. And now back in this world, I'm going to take this button over here just to show you some of my other projects I work on. So ignore that this is completely unfinished, this was just a prototype for a front. But here's my generic building style. I like to go for these sort of very simplistic and yet detailed. Basically rustic builds. Rustic's the best way I can put it. So starting over here, we have our generic, what would this be, 7x3 cobble and oak wood house. Maybe have like a bed in here, like a chest, crafting table, something simple, maybe a few torches. Just a very basic beginner starter house. And then eventually as you go along, you might adapt to fit some of these things, but I really just want to crank it up a notch and explain all of the different aspects of working on this rustic household build style. And so we're going to go down the list here. So first off, we have palette. Palette is probably the most important part of building because it is what you're going for. It's what colors you want. It's what you want it to look like. This also ties in with design as well, but design is more so a part of the building process that goes along with framework. Now, framework is supposed to work with depth right here. What you want with framework is some nice, intricate, well, but also simplistic frames that allow you to build your interior house that will give you the base work for your main blocks for the walls. Foundation here as well. You're going to want foundation so that way it looks realistic. It looks like your build has gravity. It has an actual substance to it. Gradients and depth. These are more advanced. I don't technically try to mess with gradients and depth that much. It's not that easy to implement those things. Roof, pretty simple. Most people, you ask them, they can just do a simple roof. Staircases, everyone knows how to do it. Super easy. But roofs can have a lot of just more intricate designs with them, and you can get more complex as you go along. As for decorations, of course, those are sort of just some things that you would put to add more detail to the build. You have your original framework, you have your walls, you have your windows, but the decoration aspect of things adds so much more life to your build, which will tie into atmosphere so much more. Interior, this is something that people struggle with a bit, is just trying to figure out what to do for interior to fill up space. Most of the time in survival worlds, it's a lot different than when you're building in creative. If you're building in creative, you don't need to account for all of the things like furnaces and crafting tables and storage rooms, but it's still important to tie these things in to your build. And of course, there are things that are not very necessary when building, like kitchens and such, but when you have like furnaces, you can make good use of both tying in functionality with appearance and looking good. And then you also have nature, very important. Again, ties in with atmosphere. You want to make it look nice, you want to make it look clean, you want to have life to your build. And usually I would just recommend spamming leaves everywhere, but there's certain ways to add an overgrowth to a build and also look like it has age and is grown into. And I'll touch on each of these separately as we tackle a build together. Alright, so here we're going to work on our first build. So I want to take some of these ideas, of course I don't have all of them memorized, but I want to come over here to this build and just sort of like take notes of all of these things that I mentioned. We have shape, we have framework, we have the roof, we have all of these cool things. Of course the windows aren't in, the interior isn't done. So it's very hollow and lifeless. And of course we'll add an interior to the build I work on, just so that way you can see what it's all about. But for here, we do have the natural elements, we do have the design elements, we do have a bit of atmosphere, but not enough where it feels like it's coming to life. It doesn't feel lived in. It feels like an empty shell, because guess what? It is. None of the sidewalls are designed, but this is something that we will work on completing to the fullest. You have plants and window frames and all of these things that personally I struggle with, but I think these are going to work out well. So we're going to head over to the other build and just try to figure out something simple. Also, you can see my gradient laid out. We have the roof gradient and the wall gradient. So, but also, this isn't just gradient, this is also working with our different color palettes and trying to figure out what looks best together. This one I go with the orange to blue because I think it looks the nicest. It's actually more of like a teal color, but it's really just a beautiful transition from such a harsh orange to a very light and pretty blue. This works with a lot of bringing your eyes up in a build. You see, you start down here with the darker gradients, and your eyes will move up to the light, and then the bright roof. So this has a lot to do with just how we perceive things. If you start lower, it implies more shadow, and as you get up, we see the brighter, and it brings our eyes upwards and adds such a giant scale to it. You also see the depth, the patio leading in, and then the sides here, and how it just gives so much more life to it. There's the roof depth, there's the wall depth, there's so much more going on here. And especially, a lot of people I talk to, they use glass, just the regular block, and I think glass has its place. There are points where I would use glass, but panes just add so much more depth and so many more options when you have that there. Alright, back over at the building spot, we have, starting out here with palette. So palette, what you're going to want is, probably for me, I usually pick out sort of like a stone color that I want to go with, and then also my wood color. I think if I jump ahead to framework, I can actually solidify what I want. So I want to use a spruce, just color palette in general. So we're going to start with spruce. We also need the planks. And I usually just resort to spruce because I believe it looks the nicest. I think this is the nicest looking wood in terms of just how comfortable it is, and it's nice on the eyes. Oak is nice, but I think it's too old looking, and it looks too much like generic Minecraft wood. Spruce has a lot more life to it. And then stone blocks, I think I might just go for the similar design I went over there. Maybe just a different roof, and probably a bit smaller. But I think for the gradient, I want to do a dark to light, but maybe not so dark and not so much light. So there's not going to be that much of a transition, but I think I'm just going to go with the grays here. Now, starting with the grays, we want the stone, maybe some deep slate, some, for the bottom, deep slate tiles, and then moving upwards, we have regular deep slate. In fact, these can be swapped around. And you just want as many variation of blocks as you can, trying to figure out what looks the darkest next to each other. This is probably a bit darker. This is also probably a bit darker. And then you move up stone, we can have andesite. I try not to use the falling blocks like gravel and such. I'm gonna lay out these blocks here just so we can have an idea of what our palette is that we're going for. And of course I'll leave those in my inventory. And then I also think we should go for a few brick elements. I think bricks just tie a build together, add a nice red hue to it. And I think that's what the colors we're going to go for. Maybe a red. I think we should go with maroon. But we'll get to the roof later. I think maroon would be probably the best look for a roof. In this color palette at least. So we'll save that. I guess that is a bit more of a purple, or reddish purple. But we'll save that for later. So first we're going to head on design. I think we already planned it out at least. We're going to go for a more dark and mysterious looking build. Something that's rustic, something that's nice, but a bit run down. Foundation. Actually, we're going to start with framework. So framework right here. I would always suggest working with odd numbers. You see this? You want 5. But 5 is always a little too small. You see, if you have 5 and then you work here with your building, and you close this in like this, you have 3 blocks to work with. Now, I know some people like cramped housing, it makes them more creative, but I think that 3 blocks is a lot worse than breaking up, say, 5 blocks. If you have 5 blocks to work with and you break it up in such a way that you create 3 blocks, and then you have so much more to work with, you can have this and a 2-block maybe closet. It's just so much nicer to break up a bigger build than to break up a smaller build. But also, bigger builds are harder to detail, so you're going to want to keep that in mind. I'm going to say we go with 7. It seems like the simple answer here. And I think this is going to be a generic height for the first floor, just because it's doable. It's not too big. Moving back here, we'll probably leave about three block space for the first. Oop, did that wrong. And I'll come back when I have my framing finished. So this is our framework here. It's a little wonky to bring these in, but it'll look good in the end, so just trust me on that. And now we're going to move into the main thing, which is our foundation. This also builds off of gradient, but I think foundation is probably where we should start here. Right. So first, you want to make sure that your framework for your build hits these little markers here. And you want to hit the corner. And you don't want to go out. Sorry. And you don't want to go out into this space, because then you don't reach that depth. You just have a flat wall. So with this, you have a lot more space to work with. And then we want to go in, and this is skipping a step. This is going to gradient. Just randomly placing blocks, trying to give as much variation as possible in just the color and blocks used. So you have this nice change, so that's not one solid. And then we're gonna have another layer like this, which I'll probably start with a lighter. And now we can move up to the main layer of our walls, which is just a simple spruce. No, I think that's perfect. Alright. Gradients and depth. I think we're going to switch this with roof. I want to get the roof in first, and then we can work on our gradients and depth. So first, I think we just take this simple deep slate stair design, just that way the roof incline is not as sharp as the main roof. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. Alright, ooh, we have the nice red conflicting with the nice brown. I really like that. And I think for the main roof, we might go with a little bit of a messy gradient for this. So let's find some red blocks that sort of fit with the crimsons. And now let's find some more crimson blocks just to messy it up a bit when we're done. Perfect. Alright, let's see what we got here. Perfect. Alright, I think this could work as a good, nice, messy gradient color. So we're going to start working on our roof. Alright, perfect. Now we can move on to filling in our roof. So go ahead and with these, I think we're going to go for a light to dark. So here's light to dark. Yeah, looks good. I think we'll just finish this one off for the top, and then have our final layer right there. Perfect. Just to add a bit of weathering effect, and then we'll go back in and make sure it doesn't look too empty. So now that the whole roof is in, it's looking really nice. We'll go in and add a bit of detail. I think it looks nice. We'll add windows in a bit. Also, before I jump ahead of myself, I want to do the little spiky things. And then also, I don't want to add too much though. just enough to make it look a little ruined. Now we can move on to the upper floor. Yay! Alright, cool. Looks right. Alright. And now the other side, same thing. Once you have this, it's pretty much just a lifeless blank slate of a build. And I want to add a little bit more detail. So we're going to lead on to the decoration phase and the nature phase, which is really fun. So this is also built in with depth because the decoration phase adds a lot of depth. So this is depth right here. I always forget, it's not called a window, it's called glass. I usually start with a darker one at the bottom. Or just something to add a little bit of difference in color. Yeah, I like how that looks. Alright. This one, another dark. We'll figure all these out. Alright, cool. And then the door, always put your door like so, like that. Alright. Throw glass in here. Throw glass here. There's no more spaces for windows in the front, to be honest, so let's move on to some of the other decoration items. So if you just go over here. So leaves we'll get to in a second. I'll also probably throw in a few of these. A lot of this is going to be pots, just trying to make it look lively, which is more so when we get to the life aspects to it. Maybe a few candles, and steel, chains for lanterns. So we're going to have lanterns for the main light source, lighting this place up. So we'll have one here, one here, one here, one hanging there, hanging from there, hanging from there. You can just see it's a lot of symmetry and avoiding symmetry. Candles as well. Pots. Pots are very important. I'm just going to throw a bunch of pots everywhere that I want to put flowers. There's another side down. So this is looking a bit bare. And then we're going to start throwing in these leaves, just trying to alternate patterns. Oop. Pots wherever we can. I'll come back and put flowers in those in a second. That's cool though. This is going to add atmosphere, maybe a few sea pickles, and then we're going to get some flower choices here. Ones that just sort of fit the vibe that we're going for. These sort of things. Mushrooms, pink. Pink will fit. Purple, definitely. Maybe some dead. Alright, here we go. I'm going to throw one right there and one right here. These will just give us a few particle effects. Perfect. A few of these bushes. Just to liven up the place. Also bone meal. Throw this down. Breaking some of the tall ones and some of the flowers. I'll add a chimney on this side. Actually, I'm going to do it out of bricks. Jeez. I know I said I was going to use an actual brick accent, but I don't really feel like it. Just to give it some color. Really pretty. Love it. Atmosphere, nature, interior. We'll get to interior last. Atmosphere. I might just try to tell a story. Put you right there. I try not to do full fences. I want it to look run down a bit. Perfect. Composter. Perfect. Alright. Looking nice. Custom trees could be something you could add, but for now we're just focusing on the house elements, so I won't go there. Alright. Sweet. Looking good. I really like it. Alright. we have the atmosphere, elements, particles, a bit more grass, tells a story. And now we can head on to interior, where we can tell more of a story. This is what we're working with here. So this is what we have for the interior. I think this might be a staircase down, so... Barrel. All these things, just nice little... Try not to block up the windows, but... little things. Fence. Right. You don't want people falling off. It's gotta be accurate. This could probably be covered up. So we can get down. Yep, perfect. Alright, cool. That looks good. Trapdoors are your best friend. I think the story here is this could just be like a traveler's house that he stumbled upon in an adventure. I think that sounds like a good story to tell. And it can almost be like a witch's hut that we're thinking. Also, support beams. Oh gosh, I have no idea how I didn't mention this. Support beams are very important. I think I might just go with this. Yes, it adds a lot of just nice interior breakage. We'll do stairs to act as a chair. Again, not much advice. A lot of the interior just design elements are things that you pick up from just experimenting. Let's run down the steps again. Actually, we didn't end up using this in it. So first, we worked on the palette. Our palette we chose was this nice wood with darker elements here to sort of represent a witch hut. Our design, that's what we went with. A nice little rustic house. The framework, got that in. Foundation, did that there. The gradient and depth, got that done. Roof, nice. Decorations, definitely important. Adds a lot to the build, from the before to after with decorations, very important. Interior, we already got that done. Nature, adding a few of these leaf elements and some of the pots add a lot. And the atmosphere, chimney, some nice floating particles, just trying to give a vibe off. And again, a lot of this can be just mentioned that shaders help so much, but like I feel like even without shaders on, I still feel like it would look really nice. This is gonna age really poorly if I okay, see, it looks nice. I mean, granted, it's a very stark difference, you know, there's a lot of things lost without shaders, but I still feel like it can appear nice even without the shader elements. Just, man, it looks so much nicer with the sun. We'll set it to evening. Time set. What's that? 12:50. Perfect. All right. Thank you everyone for joining me. I really hope this video was helpful. I know I'm not really the best at explaining these sorts of things, and I kind of am just all in my head when I work on this, but I really hope that it did come in handy. There's a lot of things that you just pick up by getting experience from building and just trying out new things. And of course, I'm not the best builder in the world. There are people who make this build look terrible and can do so much more with their shape, with their creativity, but this is just a basic design that I go with for all of my builds that just looks really nice and really simple. And you don't need a step-for-step tutorial to do this build because it's all just steps and stuff that you can implement into your builds, such as, you know, the framework and just adding some nice pots and such. Just things that don't necessarily need a block-for-block placing tutorial. Stuff that you can throw in on any house build you have. Even if you start off with this, just simple adding framework or adding things like different color palettes can just do so much to help your build. So I really hope you guys found this video helpful. It's been a pleasure to work on this build, and I cannot wait to see what builds you guys can come up with these sorts of cool little tricksies that I have. So thank you for joining me, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, bye.